colonies in at least 11 of the council's 15 wards, numbers rising exponentially, and Worcester now amongst the worst affected of any city in England. So will the leader of the council please tell me what plans the council now has to deal with this problem?
Councillor Mark Bayliss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Amos. It has been at least 6 months since I had a similar question, so I knew it was coming. In previous years, the council has spent between £30,000 and £40,000 per annum on goal control measures that have included proofing of specific regular goal nesting locations at 10 buildings in the city centre, disturbance trials at Lower Wick and at K2, nest and egg removal, which this year has seen 137 nests removed, 223 eggs destroyed, and 27 chicks captured live and relocated. You'll be particularly pleased on that one. Hawking is in highly sensitive areas. Chick collection, 12 removed for animal welfare reasons thus far. The removal of feeding opportunities using a PSBO for bird feeders, waste-related issues and bin rollout. The Goal Forum facilitated so that ideas and experiences may be shared. The development of planning practical guidance to support appropriate designs on city roofscapes and information collation to support goal control work in nest locations and health impacts to support goal control work and licence applications. An additional £30,000, you will remember, has been allocated by this administration through the P&R committee, a funding which has been allocated for 2021-22, and this will enable the council to do the following: a 2 months of intensive hawking, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, focusing on the city centre and areas of known concern. Proof lamppost sentry points with spikes. Increase the number of red roofs in and around the city centre, which have had a positive impact on deterring goals. Work with the Worcester bid on bunting, including design specifications to deter goals. At the end of the season, we will undertake a trawl of city centre accessible roofs to remove nests and nest material to deter the goals from returning to these locations next year.
Thank you. Councillor Amos, do you have a substitute? Have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Bayliss for his extremely comprehensive answer, and dare I now hope that the council is at long last taking this crisis seriously. But I do have a supplementary. Following their suspension of their organisational licence to the council, so now requiring an individual licence even for the removal of one egg, and only after the submission of a whole array of restrictive conditions, Natural England have now deliberately made any form of gull control in this city impossible. So, will Councillor Bayliss agree with me that the council must now declare a gull health and safety emergency? And will he ask our Member of Parliament to tell these out-of-touch bureaucrats to stop peddling the lie that these vicious flying rats are in any way endangered, although they certainly would be if I get my way for a cull?
Thank you. Councillor Bayliss.
I think I won the bingo game. I was just knocking off the phrases, but he got them all in. What I would agree with him is that the government needs to take this issue more seriously than they have. And I will undertake to speak to the Member of Parliament to raise this at ministerial level. I think the goal numbers are at a level now that are a serious impact on the health and safety of this city, and I think the government needs to reflect on that, and all agencies of government needs to make sure that how they implement policy is in line with best practice. So I will give him that assurance.
Thank you very much for that. And the next question is from Councillor Robin Norfolk to Councillor Andy Stafford, Chairman of the Environment Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question to Councillor Stafford is, what actions are being taken to address the lack of play space for young people aged between 11 and 16 within the city?
Councillor Andy Stafford.
Thank you for your question. A strategic play area assessment has been undertaken, and this has identified a lack of play space for young people within the city. This is a common picture up and down the country and by no means unique to Worcester. As well as the City Council, both the County Council and registered housing providers also provide play areas in the city. Officers are currently developing a strategic play area development plan with the aim of presenting this to members in November. The traditional route to new or refurbished play areas has been via the planning system and in particular developer Section 106 contributions. In June, members were provided with an opportunity to attend training on developer contributions. Following this, members will be contacted shortly to become more involved in the process of allocating and spending Section 106 contributions. I ask members to please engage in this process so that children of all ages, wherever they happen to live, can have the best possible access to suitable play facilities.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary? Councillor Norton.
I'd like to thank Councillor Stafford for his answer, and given that answer, I don't have a supplementary, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Very much. And we will now go on to the next question from Councillor Neil Laurenson to the Leader of the Council, Mark Bayliss.
Thank you, Mayor. More than 150,000 people in the UK have died from COVID-19. On the 5th of July, the Prime Minister announced that it will no longer be compulsory by law to wear face coverings in England from the 19th of July, as well as other measures being removed. Do you agree that this is the wrong decision and that the public ought to continue to wear masks wherever possible to protect anyone around them who may be vulnerable?
Councillor Bayliss.
The short answer to that is no, I don't agree with that statement. The Prime Minister is very clear that we cannot return to normal on the 19th of July. And if people do not take the opportunity to be sensible, then the situation will be reviewed in respect of face coverings. Government is asking that we all use personal judgment to manage our own risk. All of us can play our part in exercising common sense and considering the risks. While no situation is risk-free, there are actions that we can take to protect ourselves and others around us. Government remain particularly committed to supporting and protecting vulnerable people. The County Council's Here to Help scheme remains in place, and as a City Council, we continue to support this group through our working with community-based organisations. As soon as further guidance is published on supporting clinically extremely vulnerable population, we will ensure that as Council, we are working in line with that guidance and supporting the group of people along with partner agencies.
Thank you. Councillor Laurenson, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. I have to confess, I struggled to hear some of the answers, so apologies if the supplementary covers some of the ground that Councillor Bayliss has already covered. Anyway, I'll press on. On the 18th of May, this council agreed to form a health and wellbeing committee, which has responsibility for, and I quote, mental and physical health and wellbeing outcomes for residents and customers of the council. Given that the vaccines are not 100% effective, especially for those with suppressed immune systems, would you agree that we owe these people a duty of care, and where practical, we should consider maintaining the use of face coverings for all those working in customer-facing roles?
Thank you. Councillor Mark Bayliss.
Thanks very much. It's probably the first time ever that somebody has said they can't hear me, but I'll try and make sure that Councillor Laurenson can. I think as an employer, a respected employer in the city, and as a service provider, we certainly should do what we can to help our customers and our staff to work in a sensible and safe way. So I will be looking at the managing director and senior staff to continue to operate our organisation in that regard.
Thank you for that. And I have a further question from Councillor Neil Laurenson, again to the Leader of the Council, Mark Bayliss.
Thank you, Mayor. The Police Crime Sentencing in Courts Bill recently passed its third reading. The bill was approved by many concerns that it will criminalise peaceful protests. Do you share these concerns?
Okay, Councillor Bayliss.
Again, the answer is no. The bill is currently on the second reading in the House of Lords. The proposed measures within the bill will not grant the police, local authorities, or any other body powers to ban protests, but rather to place conditions to manage protests to minimise impact. The measures contained within the bill will balance the rights of protesters with the rights of others to go about their business unhindered. This will be achieved by enabling the police to better manage highly disruptive protests. The highly disruptive tactics used by some protesters cause a disproportionate impact on the surrounding communities and are a drain on public resources. For example, during Extinction Rebellion's protests of April and October 2019, some of London's busiest areas were brought to a standstill for several days, with a policing operation for the two extended protests costing £37 million, more than twice the annual budget of London's Violent Crime Task Force. As a council, we already work closely with partner agencies where we are approached by an organisational group who wish to hold a peaceful protest, and there have been several examples of where peaceful protests have been held over the past 18 months with a responsible level of dialogue taking place between all parties. We see no reason for this to discontinue.
Thank you. And a supplementary, please, from Councillor Laurenson.
Thank you. On the 30th of March, Councillor Bailey said at full council that he believes that, and thoughts on this apparent contradiction. Apologies for the sound effect, that wasn't me.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that if there is a case to be answered in terms of that it will be brought through the courts, and the courts will decide whether it is compliant with the Human Rights Act or not. But my general view is, you know, the sort of highly disruptive protests that some people on the extreme end of the scale want to engage in are things that the police need greater powers to prohibit and to restrict. I remember certainly senior members of other parties engaging in pretty significant conversations with the police when the EDL wanted to march in this city and cause hatred and racism. And the police said that their hands were tied by archaic legislation around us. I believe this act will enable those sorts of protests to be better constrained and their impact less impactful, shall we say. I'm afraid, I don't agree that with people on Extinction Rebellion who want to cause a maximum amount of harm and disruption to society in order to press their particular agenda. And I think we need as a society to stand up and say that. So I'm afraid that probably won't be what he wants to hear, but I think it's where the majority of the British public are.
Thank you very much. That concludes the questions. What I would say is we did get to further one, but unfortunately they were after the deadline. I know under this, I do have a discretion to allow for the questions if they are deemed to be urgent and relevant. Unfortunately, these ones were not, but I do look forward to receiving them in September. What I would say to members who do want to submit questions, make sure you submit them before the deadline, before the meeting, so you're not disappointed. Now, I notice we now have our public speaker now online, so I believe we are ready to deal with that particular part of business. I'd just like to advise Mr. Snooks that he has up to 5 minutes speaking time. So when you and the technology is ready, can we proceed?
Hello, can you hear me? Yep, okay, thank you. Is it possible to share my screen? Do you mind? Host has disabled participant screen sharing. Is it possible to, is there somebody there that can do that for me?
We'll certainly endeavour to do that, although members in the room may find that a little bit small, Mr. Snooks,
Okay.
depending on the size of the text.
I'll describe the beautiful pictures I've got.
If you wish to circulate it afterwards to members, perhaps that would
Okay.
be best.
Right. So I just, on behalf of Worcester Environmental Group, I'd like to say we're really thrilled with the progress that the native meadow wildflower verges and green spaces are going. You might recall that we started a trial on Dugdale Drive. It's been incredibly successful, really popular with the public on the whole. And I understand from talking to various councillors and officers that it's going to be rolled out in appropriate places throughout the city. What I would hope to be able to do is, with those of you that have potential sites, we would be very happy to come with you and have a walk and a talk and look at some of the areas where there's potential for you to have the native wildflower meadows. One of the things that we'd like to differentiate between the Dugdale Drive, I really wish I could show this photograph. It was cut very short for decades. It simply was a different regime, cut and collected twice a year. They just collect the cuttings, and it's just blossomed into the most beautiful native wildflower meadow. We've lost 97% of those throughout the country. It's swarming with all sorts of pollinators and butterflies and so on. And we'd love to help any of you that have suitable sites that you would be interested in talking to us about, where we might be able to do the same, so that we can create wildflower networks through the city to enable our pollinators to traverse through the city. So I'll be contacting you by email in the near future, and hopefully we can meet up with you to have a look at some of your potential sites that will please your residents. Without exception, when I speak to people on the Dugdale site, people are really positive about it. And I think in social media, there's been a lot of enthusiasm, and it's starting to happen all over the country. So it'd be wonderful to be able to help you in your wards to do something that will be beneficial to both the residents and also for their well-being, and also for wildlife. And that's me finished.
Thank you very much for your contribution, Paul Snooks. We'll now move the agenda on to the next item, which is the notice of motions which have been submitted in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 8. So I'd like to first of all ask for the proposal of the first motion, which is titled Pets as Prizes, to move the motion. Yeah, could you start the motion? We are struggling to hear you a bit.
Councillor
Sorry.
Laurenson, is your microphone switched on? Is it
I'm just
working?
getting to work. I pressed the wrong button. I apologise. So, yeah. Yeah, can you hear me now? Thank you. Apologies. It's the bugbear of my wife. I'm deaf as a post. I apologise. I assume everyone's read the motion, so I won't read it out now. I'll just read a very short speech in support of it. This issue was brought to my attention by a local resident. Under the Animal Welfare Act 2006, it's an offence to give an animal as a prize to anyone under the age of 16, except within the family context. However, I agree with the RSPCA that this doesn't go far enough. Between 2015 and 2020, there were 120 cases reported to the RSPCA of live animals being given as prizes in England. Of course, the emphasis ought to be in the word reported. Who knows the actual number? This motion isn't just about banning the giving of live animals as prizes on council-owned land. It's also an opportunity to raise public awareness of this outdated practice. The more local authorities that pass such a motion, the greater the possibility that national legislation will be altered so that this outdated practice will finally be stopped in this country. Therefore, I urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Yes, Councillor Karen Lewin, do you want to stand up and take the microphone?
Councillor Lewin, I don't think your microphone's operational.
How about that?
Great, thank you. I mean,
Okay, as an animal lover, I support this motion. I feel strongly that the City Council can take a lead on this issue to protect and reduce the completely unnecessary suffering of live animals. Animal ownership is a big responsibility and shouldn't be a spur of the moment result of winning a game. I would welcome the support of councillors to ban this cruel practice. Thank you.
Okay, I will now invite other speakers. So could I have a hand, please? I understand that Councillor Jim Carver wants to speak, and I've also got a hand from Councillor Andy Roberts, Mark Bayliss, and Chris Mitchell, and Richard Udall as well. So, okay, so first of all, Councillor Jim Carver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this really surprises me, this motion. I think I'll leave comments to be made by other colleagues, but I'd like to just draw council's support to the fact that many people throughout the city of Worcester, throughout the country, do not have the facility to have a cat or a dog, a rabbit, or any other such pet, and are happy to have a goldfish. Many people take a goldfish as what they've taken home as a prize from a fun fair, and they've loved that animal over many years. Many tears have been shed by children as Goldie has been flushed down the toilet after some time. But there is a serious side to this, and that side is that it teaches animal husbandry to children and offers young children in living perhaps in a premises where they don't have the ability to have the pet that they would so desire to have. It gives them a chance to learn about animal husbandry for later in life. And I have to say, there is another side to this, which I find quite offensive. And that is that somehow people who give prizes away on fairgrounds are treating animals cruelly. Is that any different? What is the difference between someone having goldfish on a fun fair to someone selling goldfish at a garden centre or anything like that? So is this aimed at the show community? I hope not. I sincerely hope it is not. I, for one, would not stand in the way of any showman earning the living that they've carried on generations before them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carver. Next hand I saw was Councillor Andy Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My starting point, if I may, is that I think that giving animals away as prizes is an archaic idea that should be confined to history. But then the next question is it a proper thing for us to be debating in this council and in this way? We know that there's a proper way of doing this, and the proper way is that it's considered by a committee in all properness, which would also apply common sense. It was probably a common sense of how much, not so much how much it cost, how much of a distraction would this be from our officers? Our licensing officers are fighting against COVID. Our enforcement officers are trying to keep the streets clean and free from traffic. That would be the debate if it was done through a committee system. We've not done this. We've just gone straight to the notice of motion, and thereby lies the danger. You'll know that at the last council meeting, a ward member for St Stephen's talked about legalising the traffic of cocaine. At this meeting, we've got somebody who wants to outlaw the trafficking of goldfish. I honestly think that this, however well-meaning, this motion holds us in disrepute, and I can't for the life of me think that it displays what the people of St Stephen's see as a priority. So the motive, putting aside the motive behind it, giving away animals as pets is a thing that should never have happened. It's something in the past, but to apply it to a motion in this way is something we want to learn from. We must not do this again. I will vote against the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for your contribution. Next I'll call Councillor Chris Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Roberts has said a lot of what I wanted to say, so I'll keep it short and to the point, because obviously we're wasting enough time on this as it is. I don't think this is business for the council. I am personally getting sick and tired of these pointless and stupid motions, which I'm not sure what they're aimed at achieving, other than a little bit of favour with a very small part of the community. So I'll be voting against this, and we'll just ask fellow councillors to try and be a bit more responsible and grown up when we come to the council about the motions we're going to bring. The next motion is something I'm very happy to debate because I think it's serious and it's important. This is just wasting my time, and my time's quite valuable.
Thank you. I'll now call Councillor Richard Udall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support this motion, as do the RSPCA, and that's because I believe animal welfare is important, but I wish this motion to be passed. But I have a question to ask. I believe this is already council policy. I can remember in the 1980s, when we had a Labour council, we banned circuses with live animals, and we banned the issuing of live animals as prizes on council property at the same time. So I'd like some clarification legally whether we're actually being asked to do something which we already do. However, it may well be the case that there's no enforcement. And if that is the case, it's something which we should actually be looking at to ensure that our existing policies are being met. I don't recall that our policy has ever been changed, so I'm not sure this motion is completely necessary. But the rejection of it by the Conservatives who've spoken show their total disregard for animal welfare in this city and in this country, and they should be ashamed of themselves. Talking about what's the difference between a fairground and a pet shop. Well, I can tell you what the difference is. A pet shop is licensed. It has to comply with certain rules and regulations about welfare. The fairground attractions which issue pets as prizes are not, and they should cover the same restrictions. I support this motion on the grounds of animal welfare.
Thank you for your contribution. Councillor Mark Bayliss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint the mover of the motion by saying I too am going to vote against this. I mean, this is virtue signalling of the worst type. It's what we've come to used to. It's not what the people of Worcester. You know, we've all been out knocking thousands of doors in recent months and having, you know, the public tell us what are the priorities. You know, as we emerge from a pandemic, 28,000 people still on furlough. You know, thousands of businesses struggling to keep going. And thankful for the grants they've been given, but need the help. And what do we get brought to us? You know, the key issues, according to Councillor Laurenson, are goldfish. I just don't think this is the key issue for it. It just encourages, as my colleague has said, it just encourages more and more of this virtue signaling without any real meaning to it. So, you know, I will vote against it on the basis that this council has far more important things that we should be talking about than this. And by the way, this isn't a unique thing. Of course, this was one of those identikit motions that sent round to all councillors time and time again by different special interest groups. Most people look at it and think we're not going to do that, it's not relevant. But just occasionally a few people think they'll make a bit of a name by doing this. So I would encourage people to focus on the things that really matter and keep this council focused on those.
Thank you. Are there any more people wishing to speak on this?
On a point of order, Mr. Mayor, I did ask for clarification as I believe this is already council policy and whether we can have check on that issue to make sure that we're not voting on a motion which already exists.
Councillor Rudel, I will not be able tonight to confirm the policy position, regrettably. I would note that the motion also has two elements to it. The second element is a request that the Managing Director write to HM Government. So that is itself a new matter. I'm simply not able tonight to confirm the policy position. So the motion must go forward as is at the present time.
Okay, are there any further people who want to speak? So a hand. Okay, so Councillor Laurenson, do you want your right to reply now? Is it? Or is there another speaker?
Yeah.
Okay, can you stand up, please? Next speaker.
Thank you. Is this a right reply? Am I summing up? Yeah, move quickly on. Yeah, just to quickly respond to some of the contributions. I agree that it is an archaic idea to give such beams away, but nonetheless, the issue was brought to my attention by a resident, as I said at the beginning, and I felt obliged to raise it at this council. I see that's part of my job, to act on residents' concerns. The comment that the motion holds this council in disrepute is frankly outrageous. I dismiss that entirely. And the exhortation to not bring such a motion to this council again, or you must not do this again. I mean, the arrogance is astonishing. I'd urge the council to retract that comment. Councillor Mitchell said it's a pointless motion, pointless debate. I mean, I'm old enough to remember us spending 30 to 40 minutes discussing Northern Ireland. Finally, I thank Councillor Udall for his support of the motion, and I hope others are minded to do the same. Thanks for your time.
Okay, that was summing up, but obviously if another councillor's name is mentioned, they do have a right to reply, but I think in this case, we just want to take this to the vote. Okay, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask you to raise your arm high in the air, please, so I can see? All those voting for the motion, please. All those voting against? Those abstaining? Sorry, can you raise your hands, arm right up in the air, please, for those voting for? Got 16. Those voting against? Fifteen. I got that. Abstaining? Okay, so we move to the mayor for the casting vote.
Wow, okay, then I never thought I would have to use this. So I'm afraid the motion is lost. Okay, we'll now move on to the second motion, which is West Mercia Rape Crisis and Sexual Abuse Support Centre, which was proposed by Councillor Louise Griffiths. So I'll ask her to move the motion.
Thank you. West Mercia Rape Crisis and Sexual Abuse Support Centre is the only organisation in Herefordshire and Worcestershire to offer specialist support to the victims of rape and sexual violence. Services are free, confidential and non-judgmental and currently available to survivors who have experienced any form of rape and or sexual violence at any time in their lives. WMRC SASC offers both telephone advice and face-to-face counselling sessions to survivors of rape and sexual violence, both men, women, young and old, and offers a specialist independent sexual violence advisory service to survivors over the age of 5. The vast majority of those seen by the service are between the ages of 11 and 25. It's therefore devastating to hear that the service had to close its doors to new referrals whilst it clears the backlog of over 400 people currently on the waiting list, with a current estimated wait time of over 18 months from referral to a first face-to-face session. Whilst approximately 1/3 of funding for the service comes from the Ministry of Justice and the advocacy service is currently funded by the PCC, there is a significant funding gap and it is no longer ethical or sustainable for the service to accept new referrals. This council notes the hardship that is currently being experienced by WMRC SASC and calls on the Managing Director, Director of Homes and Communities and the leader of the council to work with partners across Worcestershire, including MPs, the PCC, the NHS and social services, in order to assist the organisation in being able to carry out this valuable and life-saving work. As some of you may know, my academic background and professional life before moving to Worcester involved me working closely with organisations such as WMRC SASC, and in particular with survivors of rape, sexual assault and gender-based sexual violence. And so in proposing this motion tonight, I'm hoping to not only highlight an invaluable and truly life-saving service that's provided, but also the exponentially rising reports of rape and sexual violence in the UK. We unfortunately live in an era where rape prosecutions are at an all-time low, with only 1.6% of reported rapes resulting in a criminal charge. The number of prosecutions is even less. Yet incidences of reported rape and sexual assault are at an all-time high. This service provides free access to counselling and support for men, women and children across Herefordshire and Worcestershire, both in the immediate aftermath of sexual violence and in some cases many years later, once survivors feel able to open up about their experiences and discuss their trauma. In the past fortnight, we've been told that some funding has been found for the organisation in order to help it plug the gap for the coming year. However, this doesn't allow them to reopen the waiting list or clear their current backlog. And unfortunately, rape and sexual violence isn't going to stop in the meantime. This means that men, women and children will find themselves without counselling or support service going forward unless there is a long-term funding plan in place. At the moment, sexual violence support services receive no statutory funding from the government, and many are run by charities working with the police, social services and the NHS to accept referrals. This isn't sustainable, and services across the country are operating with extensive waiting lists, meaning that for many victims, they're unable to access the support they so desperately need. We know that rape is one of the hardest crimes to prosecute. Statistics for prosecutions and convictions for West Mercia do not make for good reading. And we know that sexual violence against children is worryingly high, with some organisations predicting that 1 in 20 children have been the victim of sexual abuse at some point in their life. And so organisations such as WMRC SASC are vital in ensuring that those who've experienced this truly heinous crime are listened to, their experiences acknowledged, and they don't feel as though they've been forgotten about. Both the Home Secretary and the Justice Secretary recently acknowledged the abysmal charge and conviction rates for reported rapes, and promises have been made that the CPS will do more to ensure not only criminal charges are brought, but convictions are gained. However, this isn't enough. Survivors of rape and sexual assault need counselling services and support. This is vital, and without it, many feel unable to process their trauma and struggle to cope. To that end, I call on the council to support this motion and for the managing director and leader of the council to do all they can to lobby with the government, the PCC and partners across West Mercia to call for statutory funding for sexual violence support services, and in particular for West Mercia Rape Crisis and Sexual Abuse Support Centre.
Thank you, Councillor Griffith. Can I call on Councillor Lynn Denham to second the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to my colleague. Thank you also to the Police and Crime Commissioner, who has found some emergency rescue funding to keep the service going a little longer. The statistics and the data are quite frightening. Going forward, this service has estimated that they need 400,000 a year for Worcestershire residents to meet the need. There is a huge waiting list, as already described, and they're receiving referrals from something like 60 clients a month. These aren't just numbers, but they do indicate a huge level of trauma and hurt and pain. There are very long-reaching effects from sexual abuse and from rape. All agencies expected that with COVID lockdown, there would be an increase in domestic abuse. This is a particular aspect of that increase, and it's a really frightening measure. My youngest daughter is a clinical associate in applied psychology. She treats people with mental illness in primary care in Scotland, so she receives GP referrals from people with long-standing anxiety, with depression and with relationship problems and post-traumatic stress disorders. As therapy with these individuals evolves, they frequently reveal sexual abuse or an incident of rape, something they may never have told anyone else about. And on occasion, that sexual abuse has been by a family member or by a friend. It's an illustration of the severe impact on the victim of these incidents. The people on the West Mercia rape crisis and sexual abuse support centre waiting lists are in a much worse place than those GP referrals, arguably. They have identified the trauma, they have identified the problem in their lives, and they need help to deal with it now. They need to be able to rebuild their lives now and not wait for 18 months to get that support. Not wait until after they have attempted suicide or resorted to less appropriate treatments to block out the awful experience that they have faced. I urge all members to support this motion so that our residents can access the treatment that they need on a properly commissioned and sustainably funded basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Denham. And in terms of other speakers, I know Councillor Marjorie Bissett has actually requested to speak, so I will call her first, and I will note the hand that are raising. So I see Councillor Joe Hodges after that, and Councillor Neil Laurenson. So Councillor Marjorie Bissett, please.
Councillor Marjorie Bissett. I'd just like to thank Councillor Griffiths for bringing this motion to the council. I was informed about this at the same time that she was, and I was extremely concerned and distressed at the thought of these people having to wait such a long time for help, and some not even being able to be given the promise that there would be help forthcoming. I'm speaking, by the way, on behalf of all the Green councillors, and we are all 100% behind this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Joe Hodges.
Thank you. I think we probably all received an email from Jocelyn Anderson, the CEO of the West Mercia Rape and Sexual Abuse Support, and it was alarming to receive that email announcing the impending closure of the service and the backlog of referrals and the time that the people who are referred to the service have to wait to be seen. Thankfully, the days when rape was regarded in a less serious way by the police and victim blaming was more common, those days have passed, and this abhorrent crime is now regarded much more seriously. Even so, only 5.7% of reported rape cases end in a conviction for the perpetrator. And those victims of rape who actually are brave enough to go into a court to give evidence and then find that there is no conviction at the end of it, must feel even harder hit and worse about the crime than if they hadn't gone to court. And so a service of this sort is absolutely essential. I support this motion, urging our MD and leader of the council to work with partners, but to secure permanent, sustainable funding for this vital service, because without that reassurance that that funding is going to be available every year, then we're going to be back in this situation time after time. And a vital service like this runs the risk of not being able to continue.
Thank you very much for your contribution. And next I call Councillor Neil Laurenson.
Thank you. I speak from personal experience. 20 years ago, I referred myself to a local counselling service down in Basingstoke, where I grew up, and I'm currently having counselling now, but thankfully not for the horrific issues that the individuals addressed in this motion are having to deal with. When I contacted the local health centre in Worcester a few weeks ago, I was told that I'd have to wait 3 weeks to be considered. And of course, I was having none of that. So I went and paid for a counselling service, and it's been a lifesaver. It's been an absolute lifesaver. It's just such a powerful thing that we're talking about here. To read in this motion, and indeed in emails from the service itself, that people would have to wait up to 18 months is just absolutely beyond my imagination, given my own troubles. So obviously, I urge you all to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If I don't see any more further hands, I will ask, yes, Councillor James Stanley.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I am happy to support this motion. I would not like to see society return to days when matters of this sort were not discussed, and not the victims of these crimes didn't feel that they had someone who they could empathise with, who they could open up to. That was a part of society that we've moved on from. Not enough people have that opportunity today to speak with people that over a period of time they might begin to trust and build a relationship with. The inability to build those relationships with a counsellor or someone of that description inevitably precludes them from having the opportunity to build productive and meaningful relationships themselves as they go through life. This isn't a conversation for me at the moment about the level of resources necessary. It is simply underlining the fact that as a people, we should enable those people who've suffered in this way to have the opportunity to meet with people who can, over a period of time, build their trust and encourage them to think of themselves as important members of society again. So yes, I support the motion.
Thank you very much. If there's no more speakers, I will ask Councillor Louise Griffiths for her right to reply. No? Okay, then in that case, then shall we move this to the vote?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please raise your hand if you're voting for the motion. Thank you. The motion is carried.
Thank you very much. And the next item on the agenda is the appointment of members to committee. So I'd like to invite Councillor Mark Bailiff to propose this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a fairly simple change of members to the Licensing and Environmental Health Committee because of time issues and commitments. Councillor Alcott would like to come off, and Councillor Lawrence would like to be appointed. I therefore move that as a recommendation.
And it's seconded by Councillor Chris Mitchell. Do you want to say anything?
No, Mr. Mayor, but I reserve my right to speak.
Okay, and I don't believe there are any other speakers. So can we move this to vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All those voting for? Thank you. The motion is carried.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the amendment of the scheme for members' allowances for 2021-22. So can I again invite Councillor Bayliss to move this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, again, a consequential change from our changes in structures recently are that the 2 vice chairman roles for policy and resources are not currently remunerated, and that clearly is an anomaly given our decision to remunerate other policy vice chairmen. I would propose that the posts are, there are 2 posts that they are remunerated as set out in the paper, and the logic for that is clear, that the work of vice chairman in this council, where we still manage things on I seek to gain a consensus is clear, and so I'd like to address this anomaly.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mitchell? Yeah, thank you very much. In that case then, unless there's nobody else wishing to speak on this, we will move this to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All those voting in favour? Voting against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, the council need to consider on matters which by law or in accordance with the constitution are referred to the council for decision. So the first one is a referral report from Policy and Resources Committee for the replacement of the west side floor tiles at Purdeswell Leisure Centre. So I'll ask Councillor Mark Bayliss to propose it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This element for council is about the money to do this, and so it's an amendment to the capital programme of up to 182,100 to meet the cost of the capital works. This matter has been considered by the Policy and Resources Committee and has been approved, I think, unanimously by them. There are some key safety improvements that need to be done in terms of the tiles at the sports centre. It will cost us that sort of order of money. It is, however, essential, however regrettable that we're having to spend the money so soon after commissioning the pool. But I would move it that we approve this addition to the capital programme.
And Councillor Mitchell. Okay, if there's no anybody wishing to speak, can we please take this to a vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All those voting for the motion? Thank you. Against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried.
Thank you. And now for our second referral report from the Standards Committee for the Standards Committee Annual Report of 2021. So I'll invite Councillor Andy Roberts to propose it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have the report before you. I took over in May from Councillor Matt Lamb. Matt Lamb did a fine job and he always kept his report very short, and I shall follow his example. The paper before you outlines the role of the committee. It tells you about the 11 cases we had, 5 of which were resolved and another 5 didn't need to be resolved. 1 is outstanding. 5 complaints were upheld by the Ombudsman. We considered those in closed session. We established a methodology for reports from outside bodies, and we considered revisions to the code of practice, which seems to be an ongoing thing. Every time we have a meeting, we seem to be doing that. But there we are, we did it yet again. And we also received some very interesting training. The only thing I would add to the report is my thanks through you, Chair, for the Sian Stroud for the excellent advice she provides, always with some good humour. And for Matt Lamb in particular as a former chair, and the people who sit on the committee, particularly those who are not councillors. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Matt Lamb, do you want to say any words?
Just want to thank Andy for those very kind words. And as Vice Chair, I'd like to formally recommend the report to Council.
Thank you very much. If there's no other speakers, can we please move this to the vote? I don't need a vote, okay. just to note the report. Okay, right, that's great. So we're all on the way to the agenda now. So we need to report from the council any matters of the opinion require that need consideration for the council.
No items, Mr. Mayor.
I am not aware if there are any exempt items. So therefore, looking at the agenda, I can now close the council meeting. So thank you very much for your attendance. Just one little thing. Unfortunately, we can't have drinks in the mayor's parlour tonight. I was hoping if there was a way we could actually do something about that, but unfortunately it would necessitate us sitting around tables and that. And I think it's all about mingling that. So we have talked about it, and in September we will put a buffet on, and we will do it properly, where we can all meet. So thank you very much once again for your attendance.